Most people live soft. They talk about potential but waste their days scrolling, chasing likes, and numbing themselves with distractions. They run from discomfort like it's a curse, when in truth, it's the key. They want strength, but they avoid the struggle that creates it. They trade clarity for noise, discipline for dopamine, and then ask why they feel powerless in their own lives. The harsh truth: the strongest version of you will never be born in comfort. It's built in silence, in sacrifice, in the moments when you choose to act, not because it's easy, but because your future demands it. Stoic philosophy reminds us that the obstacle is the way, not something to escape, but something to face, fully, directly, with your entire being. So if you're done being ruled by weakness and ready to reclaim your power, stay locked in. And if that speaks to something deep inside you, consider subscribing for you, for the part of you that refuses to die quietly. The journey starts here. Let's build a life that echoes. Rule 1. Stop living like prey. Most people don't even realize they're living like prey. It shows in the little things: apologizing for speaking, shrinking in rooms where they should expand, keeping their opinions quiet so they don't ruffle feathers. Prey moves through life carefully, always calculating how not to be seen, how not to be a threat, how not to take up space. But here's the hard truth: the world doesn't reward invisibility. It feeds on it. When you carry yourself like you're just trying to survive, people sense it, and they respond accordingly. They interrupt you more, they question your value, they test your boundaries. Not because they're evil, but because nature recognizes the scent of uncertainty. And if you don't claim your space, someone else will. That's not a cruel rule, it's a survival one. You're not meant to crawl through life hoping no one notices. You're meant to move with presence, and presence doesn't mean being loud or dramatic. It means being still, being rooted, being fully there. It means walking into a room without the desperate need to be liked. It means not explaining who you are every 5 seconds because you already know. Confidence is quiet like that. It's not performance. It's power under control. Carl Jung once said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. Not who the world expects. Not who people feel comfortable with, but who you truly are." And that kind of authenticity doesn't come from pleasing. It comes from presence. You don't have to become someone else to shift out of the prey mindset. You just have to stop pretending to be less than who you already are. Stop performing humility for the sake of comfort. Stop pretending weakness is some kind of spiritual badge. Start moving like your presence matters, because it does. Your tone matters. Your body language matters. The way you carry your name matters. When you walk into a room, you're telling a silent story about yourself before you say a word. Is it a story of power or a story of passivity? And if you don't like the answer, then you rewrite it, not by saying more, but by living more deliberately. There's a difference between surviving and living. Prey survives. It plays by invisible rules. Don't speak too much. Don't want too much. Don't take up too much space. But living, that's different. Living means moving toward challenge, not away from it. It means standing your ground even when your voice shakes. It means having preferences, opinions, boundaries, and not folding them every time someone else twitches. It means saying, "This is who I am," without looking around for approval. And that kind of life? It's not reserved for the loudest or most charismatic. It's for the most grounded. Being grounded doesn't mean you dominate others. It means you no longer abandon yourself. It means you stop running from discomfort, stop diluting your message, stop waiting for someone to hand you a permission slip to be whole. Prey waits for permission. You give yourself the green light. And sure, it might feel uncomfortable at first. The stares, the awkward silence, the pushback from people who liked the softer, more agreeable version of you. But that discomfort, that's growth. That's you stepping out of the costume and into your real skin. Seneca said, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste much of it." And a life lived in the mindset of prey is the greatest waste of all. You're not here to tiptoe, you're here to carve. And carving takes presence. It takes steadiness. It takes the decision to carry yourself like you've already earned your seat at the table, because the moment you do, others will feel it. Even if they don't like it, they'll respect it. And that's the goal. Respect over approval, integrity over likability, power over performance. The shift begins the second you stop moving like prey. So take a breath, lift your head, feel your spine, speak with purpose, move like you belong, because the truth is, you always have. Rule 2. Sharpen cold focus. Most people don't lose their lives in one big moment. They lose them slowly, quietly, in the spaces between distractions. 100 taps on a screen, a dozen meaningless conversations, 1,000 thoughts that go nowhere. 1 minute you're writing your goals, the next you're deep in a comment thread, arguing with someone you'll never meet. And this happens not because people are lazy, but because their focus has been stolen. In a world designed to scatter your mind, the ability to concentrate has become a rare kind of power. Not just the power to pay attention, but the power to protect your energy, to say, "This matters," and everything else doesn't. Cold focus isn't about forcing yourself to sit still. It's about knowing your mission so clearly that nothing else can compete. It's about choosing direction over stimulation. And most importantly, it's about becoming the kind of person who doesn't need noise to feel alive. That kind of focus doesn't come from scrolling. It comes from silence, from discipline, from the quiet spaces most people avoid, because silence makes people feel empty, but that emptiness is where clarity is born. That's where ideas form. That's where your real power starts to show. Every time you choose silence over scrolling, you reclaim a piece of your mind. Every time you protect your attention instead of handing it to the nearest distraction, you become harder to control. And in a world that profits from your distraction, being hard to control is strength. Think about the average day. How often are you truly present? How often are you doing what you meant to do instead of what grabbed your attention first? The truth is, most people live in reaction. They respond to notifications, not intentions. And that reactionary life steals their edge. You become the kind of person who finishes what they start, who remembers what matters, who follows through when others flake out. That's cold focus. It's not emotional. It's not fueled by hype. It's fueled by clarity. And clarity comes from asking hard questions. What am I really building? Who am I becoming by doing this every day? What would my life look like if I just removed the noise? These questions aren't always easy to answer, but they're necessary, because every day you don't answer them, the world answers for you. With distractions, with demands, with endless noise that feels urgent but means nothing. Cold focus is also about building your environment to support your mind, not sabotage it. You don't keep apps that drain you. You don't keep people around who pull you off course. You don't keep habits that reward short-term pleasure but destroy long-term peace. Focus isn't just about saying yes to your mission. It's about saying no to everything that weakens it. And when you live like that, when your daily choices match your deeper values, you stop feeling torn. You stop waking up tired for no reason. You stop wondering why nothing changes. You start moving like someone who knows where they're going. You start feeling proud of how you spend your time. Carl Jung said, "Who looks outside dreams. Who looks inside awakes." That's what cold focus does. It wakes you up from the dream of distraction and brings you back to your real life. The life that's waiting to be built. the work that's waiting to be done, the version of you that's waiting to be lived. But you can't reach that version if your mind is pulled in 10 directions every hour. You reach it by choosing one thing and giving it everything. You reach it by letting go of what doesn't grow you. You reach it by becoming still enough to see clearly. Marcus Aurelius once reminded himself, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." That strength starts with focus. Cold, clear, unapologetic focus. Not the kind you use when everything's perfect, but the kind that shows up even when it's hard, even when you're tired, even when the world is screaming for your attention. You stay locked in, you stay committed, because you know what's at stake, and the more you protect your focus, the more it protects you from regret, from confusion, from the kind of life that just drifts by while you're busy doing everything but what matters. So ask yourself right now, what if you guarded your mind like treasure? What if you made your focus so cold, so clear, so untouchable, that nothing could pull you away from becoming who you're meant to be? That's how you move different. That's how you become impossible to move. Rule 3. Rule over emotion. Emotions are powerful. They rise without warning, sometimes like a wave, other times like a fire, and they demand a response. You get a message that stings, and before your brain can even catch up, your fingers are already typing a reaction. You feel rejected, so you chase validation. You feel anxious, so you delay. And in those quick reactions, in those uncontrolled emotional impulses, you give away your power. Every time you let a fleeting emotion drive your behavior, you hand over the wheel. And slowly, silently, your life becomes a series of reactions rather than choices. But it doesn't have to be like that. Ruling over your emotions doesn't mean you suppress them or pretend they don't exist. It means you acknowledge them without being owned by them. It means you give yourself space to feel without being hijacked. Because strength isn't in pretending, it's in choosing with clarity. Most people are taught to act on emotion immediately, to defend, to prove, to chase, to escape. But emotional strength is about doing the opposite. It's about understanding that not every feeling deserves a response. Some just need to pass through. Emotions are like weather. Some days are stormy, others calm. But you don't rebuild your house every time it rains. You build strong walls. You build a solid roof. That's what inner discipline is. It's the structure that holds you steady when your emotions try to drag you off course. Carl Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." That's what emotional mastery gives you. The awareness to recognize patterns and stop blaming the world for reactions you haven't yet mastered. Think about the last time you regretted something you said or did. Chances are it wasn't because you lacked logic. It was because you let emotion take over. Maybe you let pride speak. Maybe it was fear. Maybe it was shame. And in that moment, your decision came from a wound, not wisdom. But once you learn to spot it, to sit with it, to let the emotion pass without acting on it, you start to move different. You start to respond with intention instead of reacting with pain. You start to feel the same anger, but instead of yelling, you observe. You feel the same fear, but instead of hiding, you prepare. You feel the same sadness, but instead of drowning in it, you listen to what it's trying to teach you. That doesn't mean you become cold, it means you become clear. You can still care deeply, love fully, feel everything, but with control, with presence, with choice. Emotions become tools, not chains. They don't get to drive anymore, they ride in the back seat. You use them to build, to understand, to connect, but you don't let them run your life. This is what Stoicism teaches us, that emotions are part of life, but they don't define your character. Epictetus taught, it's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters, and those reactions are where your power lives. Not in avoiding pain, but in facing it with calm, not in faking strength, but in choosing it moment by moment. The calmest person in the room isn't passive. He's powerful, because when you can stay still while others spiral, when you can think clearly under pressure, when you can feel deeply but still lead with reason, you become someone others lean on. Not because you're perfect, but because you're anchored. And that kind of presence doesn't just protect you, it elevates you. In relationships, in business, in life. People begin to trust your decisions. They notice your steadiness. They respect your silence more than others' noise. You don't have to dominate the room with emotion. You fill the room with presence, and presence is built in moments of restraint. Seneca wrote, "Most powerful is he who has himself in his own power." That's what this is about. Not power over others, power over yourself, over your impulses, over your fears, over the parts of you that used to sabotage progress. When you stop giving every emotion the keys to your life, you start to see how much more you're capable of, and that's where things begin to shift. You don't need to argue to feel strong. You don't need to react to feel alive. You don't need to defend to feel seen. You already know who you are, and that knowing makes you unshakable. So when that emotion rises, pause, breathe. Listen to it, but don't obey it. Use it, but don't let it use you. Let it inform your choices, not control them. That's how you become someone who doesn't just feel everything, but leads through it. That's how you stay grounded in storms, and that's how you rule over your emotions instead of letting them rule you. Rule 4. Discipline is your weapon. Discipline isn't loud. It doesn't shout for attention or show off on a stage. Discipline is quiet. It's built in the dark, in the small choices that no one sees, in the moments where you could let yourself off the hook, but don't. Most people want the rewards of growth without the weight of consistency. They want the strength, but not the sacrifice. The truth is, everyone's motivated when it's easy, when it's exciting, when the energy is high and the sun is out. But what about when it's cold, when you're tired, when nothing is pushing you but your own commitment? That's when the line between average and exceptional is drawn. Discipline is the part of you that doesn't care how you feel in the moment. It only cares about who you're becoming over time. It's easy to chase inspiration, to wait for that perfect wave of motivation. But motivation is like the weather, nice when it's there, useless when it's not. If your growth depends on motivation, you'll stay stuck. Because most days don't feel special. Most days feel ordinary, slow, inconvenient. Discipline means showing up on those days too. It means treating your goals like non-negotiables instead of options. That workout you didn't want to do. That early morning you almost skipped. That book you didn't feel like reading. Those are the days that count the most. Not because they're glamorous, but because they shape the part of you that follows through when it's hard. That's where real power comes from. Not hype, but habits. The danger of waiting to feel ready is that it lets you avoid responsibility. You tell yourself you'll start when life calms down, when you're more confident, when things feel just right. But discipline doesn't ask for the right moment. It creates it. It's what makes you sit down and do the work even when your mind is pulling you in 100 directions. It's what keeps you focused when the world is filled with excuses. And every time you choose discipline over comfort, you build trust with yourself. You start to believe your own words. You stop breaking promises to yourself. That self-trust becomes a quiet kind of confidence, not the kind you post about, but the kind that carries you forward when no one's watching. Epictetus said, "No man is free who is not master of himself." Discipline is that mastery. It's the ability to steer your life instead of being tossed around by impulses, by laziness, by distractions that promise relief but deliver regret. It's brushing your teeth at night, even when you're exhausted. It's showing up to work when no one's keeping score. It's choosing a walk over another hour of scrolling. It's not one big heroic act, it's 1,000 small invisible victories. And over time, those victories build strength. Not the kind measured in numbers, but the kind that shows up in how you carry yourself. When you commit to discipline, you also commit to discomfort, because growth lives there, in the boring, in the repetition, in the space between who you are and who you're becoming. You'll have to give things up: time, comfort, validation. But what you get in return is a version of yourself that's unshakable, a version that doesn't fold under pressure or get knocked off track by every bad day. You stop being a prisoner of your moods. You become someone who can be counted on by others, but more importantly, by yourself. People will tell you to rest more, to be easier on yourself, to slow down. And yes, rest is necessary. But don't confuse rest with retreat. Don't let comfort become your cage. Discipline means knowing when to push and when to pause. It means respecting your energy, but never worshipping your excuses. It means setting a standard and refusing to drop it every time life tests you. Because life will test you, and if you've built your foundation on motivation, you'll crack. But if you've built it on discipline, on showing up again and again, even when it's hard, you won't just survive the pressure, you'll rise through it. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be one." That's the essence of discipline. It's not about getting it perfect, it's about getting it done. It's about action over analysis, movement over theory. It's the quiet engine behind every strong, grounded person you respect. Because deep down, we don't admire people for their talent or charm. We admire them for their consistency, for the way they keep going, for the way they live their values when it's inconvenient. That's what you're building when you choose discipline, reliability, strength, freedom. So when it's hard to wake up, when you don't feel like doing the thing, when your mind whispers, "Just skip today," remember this: discipline is your weapon. It's what cuts through noise, through delay, through doubt. It's what builds the life you say you want. Every time you choose it, you win. Not loudly, but deeply. Not all at once, but forever. Be the one who follows through, especially when no one's clapping for it, because that's where the real transformation begins, and that's what makes you unstoppable. Rule 5. Detach from what drains you. Most people don't realize how much weight they're carrying until they finally let go. They walk around drained, bitter, tired for no clear reason, and blame it on bad luck, stress, timing. But deep down, they're not exhausted because they're doing too much. They're exhausted because they're holding on to things that no longer serve them. People, habits, memories, beliefs. So many of these things used to make sense, used to feel safe, but at some point, they started taking more than they gave. And yet, we keep them around. We convince ourselves it's normal to stay loyal to something just because it's familiar, even when it hurts. That's not strength. That's fear dressed up as comfort, and it's the reason so many people stay stuck. Detachment doesn't mean you stop caring. It doesn't mean you walk through life emotionless. It means you stop letting things own you. It means you stop measuring your worth by how much others approve of you. You stop letting someone else's chaos become your daily atmosphere. You stop staying in conversations that leave you questioning your value. There is nothing noble about constantly sacrificing your peace just to prove you're loyal. Loyalty should never come at the cost of your sanity. The truth is, most of what drains you isn't a mystery. You know exactly what it is. But naming it out loud makes it real, and real things demand decisions. Detachment is also about taking your power back from within, because it's not just people or situations that drain you. It's also your own attachments to who you think you're supposed to be. That perfection you chase, that pressure to never let anyone down, that fear of disappointing others if you choose yourself. These aren't just thoughts, they're chains, and the more you feed them, the more they blur your identity. You start living someone else's script. You become a character in a life you never wanted. And eventually, you wake up wondering how you got here. But the good news is, you can always cut the rope. Carl Jung once said, "The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely." That includes accepting that you've outgrown certain people, certain patterns, certain paths. Detachment isn't abandonment, it's clarity. It's recognizing what's no longer aligned with your direction. It's refusing to let guilt keep you tied to things that dim your light. Sometimes you have to leave, not because you're cruel, but because you're finally being honest about who you are, about what you need, about the kind of life you're building. There's strength in saying, "This no longer fits." There's courage in choosing discomfort now to protect your future peace. Because if you keep holding on to what's breaking you, you won't have the hands free to build what can grow you. People might not understand your distance. They might call it selfish. That's fine, because detachment isn't about them. It's about reclaiming your time, your energy, your focus. When you stop reacting to everything that pokes at your insecurities, you become lighter, sharper, clearer. You stop being pulled in 10 directions by emotional triggers. You start moving in one, your own. Seneca wrote, "Begin at once to live and count each separate day as a separate life." Detachment allows you to live again, to stop dragging the past into every present moment, to stop building your future based on who once hurt you, who once left you, or who still doesn't believe in you. You get to start fresh, not by forgetting, but by no longer letting it define you. Detachment is the freedom to walk away with grace. No bitterness, no resentment, just resolve. Most of the strength you admire in others doesn't come from what they hold on to. It comes from what they've walked away from. The version of you that keeps showing up for everyone but yourself, the one who tolerates more than they should, that version can't lead you where you want to go. That version has to be released, not judged, not hated, just released, because you've learned what you needed to learn. And now you choose peace, you choose clarity. You choose detachment not as a defense, but as a declaration. You are not here to be owned by anything, not a past, not a pattern, not a person. You are here to become whole. So whatever has been draining you, question it. Whatever keeps weighing on your mind, unpack it. And whatever doesn't align with your future, let it go. Because you don't need to fight for what's meant to stay. And you don't need to carry what's trying to fall away. You are not a storage unit for pain. You are not a backup plan for people who couldn't see your value the first time. You are not meant to stay small just to keep someone else comfortable. Cut the rope, choose freedom, and step forward lighter, clearer, stronger than before. Rule 6. Patience is savage. Patience has been misunderstood for too long. People hear the word and picture someone sitting still, doing nothing, waiting for luck to show up. But real patience, the kind that transforms you, is anything but passive. It's fierce, it's focused, it's the decision to pause when everything inside you wants to rush. It's holding your ground while others lunge. Not because you're weak, but because you know your time is coming. Most people live in a rush. They speak before they think. They move before they see clearly. They jump into relationships, into business deals, into arguments, all because they're afraid to wait, afraid that if they don't act now, they'll miss their shot. But that's how people get blindsided. That's how they hand over power, by moving too fast and thinking too slow. The truth is, everything powerful in nature takes time. Trees don't grow overnight. Storms don't form in seconds. The most dangerous predators don't chase everything that moves. They wait, they watch, they choose, and when they strike, it's with precision. That's the essence of real patience. It's not laziness, it's calculation. It's knowing that timing can be the difference between success and self-destruction. When you move too early, you show your hand. When you speak too soon, you give away your position. But when you wait, truly wait, you gain an edge that most people will never understand. Because while they waste energy on what's urgent, you reserve energy for what's important, and that difference compounds. Most people rush because they fear silence. They fear not knowing. They fear sitting still with their thoughts. So they talk too much, share too much, trust too fast. But silence is not your enemy. It's your advantage. The person who doesn't flinch when nothing's happening, the one who can hold still and stay composed while others lose themselves, that person always wins in the long game. When you rush, you invite mistakes. You ignore red flags. You break your own boundaries. You agree too quickly and regret too slowly. But when you practice patience, you create space. Space to see people clearly. Space to let truth surface. Space to observe without the pressure of reaction. And in that space, wisdom grows. Because patience sharpens your perception. It reveals what others try to hide. It makes you the calm eye in the middle of a storm. And that stillness, that's what makes people pay attention. Not because you're loud, but because you're steady. When you stop demanding instant results, you start building things that actually last. And this isn't about settling or lowering your ambition. It's about raising your standard. Anyone can rush. Anyone can post quick wins. But not everyone can stay patient enough to outlast the noise. The person who is still building after the hype fades, the one who keeps showing up even when no one's watching, that's the one who becomes a force. Because while others are chasing moments, you're creating momentum, and that momentum will carry you through storms that would have broken the impatient version of you. And yes, patience requires restraint. But that restraint is what gives your actions meaning. You don't speak often, but when you do, it hits. You don't move impulsively, but when you do, it's effective. You don't reveal everything, but when you choose to, it's on your terms. This is the kind of presence that makes you unforgettable, not because you're flashy, but because you're rare. Most people are predictable, but the one who can wait, who can sit in silence, who can hold back until the perfect moment, that person becomes unstoppable. Because when they act, it's not a reaction, it's a decision, and it lands with weight. Aristotle once said, "Patience is bitter, but its fruit is sweet." It may feel uncomfortable at first. You may question whether anything is happening. But trust this, if you're building with intention, if you're aligning your actions with a deeper purpose, the results will come. Maybe not when you want them, but exactly when you're ready. Patience isn't just a waiting game, it's a growth strategy. It transforms your character, it refines your vision, and it filters out everything and everyone that can't stand the weight of time. So don't be afraid to slow down. Don't let the pace of the world force you into a race you don't even believe in. Move at your own rhythm, build with depth, choose stillness when it's right. And when the time comes, when the door opens, when the target's clear, when the path aligns, move like you've been preparing your whole life for it. Because you have. You've waited, you've watched, you've sharpened your edge. And now, when you move, nothing can stop you. That's the power of savage patience. It doesn't ask for permission. It waits, it strikes, and it never misses. Rule 7. Use silence like a blade. Most people today are afraid of silence. They rush to fill every quiet moment with words, noise, or opinions. They feel the need to explain themselves, to comment on everything, to constantly be heard. But the louder the world gets, the more valuable silence becomes. It's rare now, which is exactly why it's powerful. When everyone is shouting over each other to be seen, the one who holds still, who doesn't flinch, who speaks only when necessary, that's the person who stands out. And not just because they're quiet, but because they're intentional. Silence, when used well, isn't emptiness. It's a weapon, a tool that holds weight, a form of communication that speaks louder than noise ever could. There's a certain pressure in conversations to respond quickly, to prove that you're listening, to fill in the gaps. But what if you didn't? What if you just paused, thought longer, spoke less? You'd notice something strange happen. People start leaning in. They wonder what you're thinking. They try harder to read you. That mystery creates gravity, and that gravity pulls attention, not because you demanded it, but because you withheld just enough to make them notice. There's a difference between being silent because you're unsure and being silent because you're sure enough not to explain yourself. The second one carries weight. It's the silence of someone who knows they don't owe the world a reaction. Carl Jung once said, "In the silence of listening, the soul finds the path in a clearer light." That's what silence gives you, clarity. It's not just about how others see you, it's about how you see yourself. When you stop filling the air with noise, you start hearing your own thoughts. You start noticing things you used to miss. You start picking up on details, tone, tension, intention, that only show themselves when you're quiet enough to catch them. And in those observations, you gain power. Because when you understand the room better than everyone else in it, you don't have to dominate it. You just wait for the right moment, and when you speak, it lands. Silence also protects you. It gives you time to think, time to breathe, time to choose your response instead of reacting emotionally. When someone's trying to push your buttons, they expect you to explode. That's the trap. But when you don't give them the reaction they want, they lose control. Your silence becomes pressure. It makes them uncomfortable. It makes them question their approach. And that discomfort, that's your advantage. You didn't fight. You didn't explain. You didn't lose your center. You just stayed still. And in that stillness, you stayed in power. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injury." That means not responding in kind, not lowering yourself to someone else's level, not reacting just because they expect you to. Silence is how you rise above without needing to say a word. It's how you choose peace without weakness. It's how you keep your dignity intact while others throw theirs away in a scramble to be seen. You also start to notice that silence creates presence. When you walk into a room and don't say much, people take note. They become curious. They wonder what you're thinking. They sense something different. You don't have to be the loudest to be respected. Often, it's the one who speaks least that holds the most weight. Not because they're shy, but because they've trained themselves not to speak unless it serves a purpose. And that's what makes them unforgettable. Their silence isn't absence. It's power held in reserve. That doesn't mean you never express yourself. It means when you do, it matters. Your words carry more meaning because you didn't waste them. People listen closer because they know you don't speak just to fill space. That's what gives your voice its sharpness, its edge, not the volume, but the scarcity. Silence, used wisely, is precision. It's saying more by saying less. It's choosing depth over noise, and it's knowing that real influence doesn't always announce itself. So the next time you feel the urge to over-explain, stop. The next time someone tries to bait you into an argument, pause. The next time you feel pressure to share something just to be accepted, pull back. Observe instead of react. Choose stillness over noise. Let people wonder. Let them reach. Let them project. Because in that silence, you remain in control. And in that control, you build something most people never will. Respect without demand, presence without performance, and power without noise. Rule 8. Command respect without asking. Respect isn't something you ask for. It's not something you earn with words or win by charm. It's something you build, moment by moment, through the way you move, the way you hold yourself, the way you respond when no one's watching. People don't respect you because you want them to. They respect you when they see you live with principles and refuse to bend them for comfort or attention. That's the core of it. If you chase respect, you hand over the very power that creates it. The moment you try to prove your worth, you lose a piece of it. But when you stand solid in who you are, when you no longer need to be liked to feel whole, that's when people start paying attention. Real respect is built through action, through consistency, through quiet strength. It's built when you say what you mean and mean what you say, when your words match your behavior, when you don't tolerate being spoken to a certain way, even if it means walking away. It's built when people see you stay calm under pressure, when you don't explode just because the situation got tense. It's built when you follow through, not just on promises to others, but on the ones you make to yourself. Because how you treat yourself is the foundation of how others will treat you. If you let yourself slide on your own values, don't be surprised when others do too. Carl Jung once said, "The world will ask you who you are, and if you don't know, the world will tell you." That's the danger of not owning your space. If you don't set the tone for how you want to be treated, someone else will do it for you, and it won't always be with respect. That's why you have to lead with clarity, not by demanding respect, but by embodying it. You don't need to yell, you don't need to flex, you just need to move in a way that says, "I know who I am, and I don't need your permission to be it." People feel that, they adjust around that. But commanding respect also means enforcing consequences. That's where many people fall short. They set boundaries, but don't follow through. They say they won't tolerate something, but when it happens, they excuse it, justify it, or stay silent. That gap between what you say and what you do, that's where respect disappears. Because people don't listen to what you allow once, they watch what you continue to allow. And if they see that your boundaries are more like suggestions, they'll start treating them like that. It's not about being harsh, it's about being firm. You can be calm and kind, and still be non-negotiable about how you expect to be treated. Respect also comes from doing the things others avoid, from showing up when it's hard, from not making excuses, from staying grounded when life gets loud. When people see that you're not easily moved, that you're not chasing attention or crumbling under criticism, they start to see you differently. They realize that your worth isn't tied to external noise. And in a world full of performance, that kind of presence becomes rare. It becomes respected. You don't need to convince anyone. You just need to be someone they can't overlook. Stop explaining who you are and start showing it. Stop trying to win over people who don't value you and start living in a way that makes them reconsider. The goal isn't to be feared. It's to be respected for your clarity, your strength, your refusal to bend for approval. People remember that. They respond to it. And they start showing up differently around you, not because you demanded it, but because you modeled it. So if you want respect, stop chasing it. Stop begging for it in relationships, in conversations, in crowds. Build it from the inside, and then live it on the outside. Speak less. Hold your line. Stay true to your word. Don't react to everything. Don't try to be everything to everyone. Just be solid. Be someone people know they can't shake. Be someone they watch carefully because they know you move different. That's how you become unforgettable, not through noise, but through silent strength. That's how you command respect, without ever needing to ask for it. Rule 9. Build a legacy, not just a lifestyle. Most people are busy chasing a lifestyle that looks good on the surface but feels hollow when the lights go off. They chase comfort, they chase attention, they chase temporary highs dressed up as goals, and they live in a cycle of quick wins and shallow applause, constantly needing something new just to feel alive for a second. But that kind of life fades fast. It doesn't leave a mark, it doesn't echo, it vanishes the moment the noise dies down. That's the danger of building for now instead of building for always. The question isn't, how good does this feel? It's, what will this mean when I'm no longer here to explain it? That's what legacy demands. It asks you to build not just for your life, but for the life that comes after you, for the impact that speaks in your absence. Building a legacy doesn't mean chasing fame. It doesn't mean trying to be remembered by the world. It means making your days count. It means stacking meaning, not just money. It's creating something that holds weight beyond you. That could be the way you treat people, the standards you uphold, the values you refuse to bend even when no one's watching. It's the discipline you keep, the battles you choose, and the quiet way you stand tall when life tries to make you small. It's not flashy, it's not loud, it's consistent, intentional, daily. People often think legacy is about one grand moment, but it's not. It's about thousands of small ones, repeated with care, repeated with purpose. That's how you go from noise to substance. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "What we do now echoes in eternity." That isn't a metaphor, it's a reminder. Every choice you make ripples forward. Every decision shapes a story. And every time you choose to do what's right over what's easy, you're carving your values into the structure of your life. Most people chase the weekend, the vacation, the next trend, but that's not your path. Your path is deeper, it's quieter. It doesn't always come with a round of applause, but it comes with self-respect. It comes with clarity. It comes with peace. Because you're not living for the moment, you're living for what the moment will mean 5 years from now. Building legacy means taking ownership, not blaming the world, not waiting to be chosen. You choose yourself. You lead yourself. You stop expecting someone else to come save you, and you start being the person who saves others. Through example, through action, through discipline. It's waking up every day and asking, what am I building today that will still matter tomorrow? Maybe it's your business. Maybe it's your health. Maybe it's your children. Maybe it's the way you carry yourself when no one's looking. Legacy doesn't have to be huge. It just has to be real. It has to stand for something. Carl Jung once said, "You are what you do, not what you say you'll do." That line carries weight, because legacy is never written in intention. It's written in behavior, in action, in repetition. It's not enough to want greatness. You have to build it, brick by brick, day by day. And yes, it's hard. It requires sacrifice. It asks you to walk away from easy pleasures, from comfort, from the distractions that steal your time, but give nothing back. You don't build a legacy by living like everyone else. You build it by being willing to do what most people won't. Legacy is also about truth, about living in a way that aligns with who you really are, not who the world told you to be, not who your past tried to shape you into, but who you were always meant to become. That means shedding old habits, letting go of people who don't grow with you, saying no when you need to, standing firm when it would be easier to fold. It means doing the hard things even when no one is watching, because you are watching, and your future self is depending on your present self to show up. Seneca once wrote, "While we wait for life, life passes." And that's the danger of waiting to start. You think you have time, but time isn't promised. What you have is now, and what you do with it becomes the story of your life. So make it a story worth reading, a story built on purpose, not performance, a story built on strength, not shortcuts. You don't have to be perfect, but you do have to be intentional. Every brick matters, every decision builds, even when it doesn't seem like it, even when it feels slow. So today, ask yourself, what am I building that will still matter when I'm gone? Not in a dramatic way, in a real way, in a quiet, grounded, lasting way. Maybe it's your mindset, your discipline, the way you show up for others, the way you show up for yourself. Stack the bricks, stack them slowly, stack them when no one sees, stack them when you're tired, stack them when you're doubting, because one day those bricks will become a structure no one can ignore, a structure built not for comfort, but for legacy. You weren't born to be a flicker, you were born to be a flame. So build like it, live like it, and leave something behind that speaks long after you've stopped talking. Rule 10. Kill the old you ruthlessly. Transformation doesn't start when you add something new. It starts when you finally let go of what no longer serves you. That version of you who always hesitated, who talked about change but never followed through, who hoped life would somehow shift without doing the uncomfortable work. That version has to go. Not gradually, not gently, ruthlessly. Because the truth is, you cannot carry both the future you want and the excuses that are holding you back. One will always weigh the other down. And most people stay stuck not because they don't know what to do, but because they keep trying to evolve without letting the old identity die. There's a voice inside you that whispers, maybe later. Maybe when I'm more ready. Maybe after things settle down. That voice is not your friend. That voice is your oldest enemy, dressed as logic. It's the soft lie that keeps you stuck. The comfortable cage that feels like safety, but is actually a slow death. The version of you that listens to that voice, the one who scrolls instead of builds, who waits for motivation instead of mastering discipline, who overthinks and underacts, that version has to be put to rest. Because you can't rise while holding hands with the part of you that only knows how to crawl. Killing the old you isn't about shame. It's about clarity. It's the clear decision to stop negotiating with weakness, to stop arguing for your limitations, to stop dragging every mistake, every delay, every self-doubt into the next chapter of your life. It's not personal. It's necessary. Carl Jung once said, "In each of us there is another whom we do not know. He speaks to us in dreams and tells us how differently he sees us from the way we see ourselves." That version is already inside you. The focused one, the bold one, the one who doesn't flinch when life pushes. But he can't fully emerge until the older, softer version is gone, and the old you won't go quietly. It will fight for survival. It will use your comfort against you. It will remind you of every failure. It will make you doubt your momentum. Because that version knows one thing: it only exists when you give in. So the moment you decide to stop giving in, to stop retreating, to stop being ruled by your lowest habits, it starts to die. Slowly at first, then completely. But only if you stay consistent. Only if you stop turning around to check if it's still there. Most people want transformation to feel good, but it doesn't. It feels like loss, like letting go of a friend who always kept you company in your worst habits, like deleting numbers, like changing your routines, like saying no when it would be easier to say yes and avoid judgment. But that discomfort is growth. It's the tension between who you were and who you're becoming. And the more you lean into it, the more you start to recognize the signs. You start to catch your old self before it speaks. You start making different choices without needing to convince yourself. You start becoming someone who doesn't tolerate their own excuses anymore. You don't need to announce your transformation. You just need to commit to it. The strongest version of you doesn't shout for attention. It moves differently. It works when others sleep. It speaks only when needed. It doesn't chase, it attracts. And the only way to become that version is to stop compromising with the one who only knew how to survive. You're not here to survive. You're here to lead, to build, to leave something behind that reflects who you really were, not just who you were conditioned to be. This shift is internal. No one can see it at first, but you feel it in your thoughts, in your posture, in the way you respond to things that used to trigger you. That's the sign that the old version is fading, and when it tries to come back, and it will, you meet it with silence, with action, with standards that are too high for its comfort. That's how you kill it. Not through drama, but through decisions, through boundaries, through the quiet statement, "I don't do that anymore." This is your moment of separation. The moment you look at the habits that drain you, the mindsets that trap you, the patterns that betray you, and say, "No more," not with emotion, but with clarity. You've already outgrown that version. Now it's time to bury it. Burn the bridge, cut the rope, lock the door, and never open it again. The person you're becoming deserves full access to your energy, not shared custody with a version that only ever slowed you down. So walk forward, clean, focused, unapologetic, because the only way to rise is to leave behind the weight that was never meant to come with you. And once you do that, nothing can stop you, because you're no longer divided, you're aligned, and that's where real transformation begins. The old you was just the training ground. Now it's time to become who you were always meant to be, deliberate, disciplined, unstoppable. If this message spoke to you, there's another video waiting that will take you even deeper. Watch it next. And thank you for being a part of Stoic Journal.